Our journey today leads us to the quiet town of Plains, Georgia, where a boy destined to become the 39th President of the United States was born.
This farmhouse has been standing here for 101 years. Looks as good as new. And if you happen to come by in the 1930s, a little boy named Jimmy was running around here.
Donna Carmichael says way back in the day, a child's life on a farm in rural Georgia wasn't all fun and games.
He got up in the morning and he had chores that he had to do. He came home from school, he had more chores. You were expected to work, physically work.
A boy named Jimmy Carter did that work. A couple of country miles outside of downtown Plains, the farmhouse he grew up in is still here. His father bought it and 360 acres around it in 1928, and the family made a living off the land. It changed hands, then changed hands again when the National Park Service purchased and restored it 30 years ago. The president himself tells the story for folks who visit by the thousands every year. On this day, some students from nearby Georgia Southwestern State University impressed to learn that after his siblings, most of Carter's childhood playmates were black children. There may have been racism in this part of the world in those days, but not in his world.
We'll chart his path from the fields of a peanut farm to the hallowed halls of the White House, diving into the turbulent waters of his presidency and beyond. Welcome to the tale of Jimmy Carter, a leader who navigated his ship through the stormy seas of stagflation and international crisis, all the while holding firm to his compass of human rights and peace. Jimmy Carter was born on October 1st, 1924 in Plains, Georgia. He was named James Earl Carter Jr., and he was the eldest of 4 children of James Earl Carter Sr., a farmer and businessman, and Lillian Gordy Carter, a registered nurse. Carter's ancestors had lived in America since the 1630s and were residents of Georgia since just after the Revolution. Carter grew up in a rural environment and worked on his family's farm, where they grew corn, cotton, peanuts, and sugarcane. He attended public schools in Plains, Georgia, and showed an aptitude for science and engineering. After graduating from high school, he attended Georgia Southwestern College and the Georgia Institute of Technology before being admitted to the United States Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland. He graduated from the Naval Academy in 1946 with a Bachelor of Science degree. After graduating from the Naval Academy, Carter married Rosalind Smith, a fellow native of Plains, Georgia. The couple would have 4 children: Amy, Donald, Jack, and James. Carter embarked on a 7-year career in the Navy, serving as an officer on submarines. In 1953, he was preparing to serve as an engineering officer on the submarine Seawolf when his father died. Carter resigned his commission and returned to Plains, Georgia to take over the family's peanut farm. Carter proved to be a successful farmer and businessman, expanding his family's operations and becoming active in community affairs. He served as a deacon at the Plains Baptist Church and was elected to the local Board of Education. In 1962, he won election to the Georgia State Senate as a Democrat. He was re-elected in 1964, but lost a bid for the governorship in 1966. He ran again for governor in 1970 and won.
I think we have a nation that is truly great, not that used to be great or someday will be great again, but one that has an innate character about it that's not adequately recognized. A stability, a pride in its past, an economic strength that is presently not recognized adequately by the people in this country and around the world.
He served as Georgia's governor from 1971 to 1975.
If there's one thing that can bind our country together, that can make us have hope again and faith in the future, it's a president who is in touch with the American people, a man who understands our needs and our strengths. Such a man is Jimmy Carter.
Then Jimmy Carter served as the 39th President of the United States from 1977 to 1981. his presidency was marked by a number of significant events, both at home and abroad.
The energy crisis has not yet overwhelmed us, but it will if we do not act quickly. It's a problem that we will not be able to solve in the next few years, and it's likely to get progressively worse through the rest of this century. It is a crisis of confidence, threatening to destroy the social and the political fabric of America. One of the agreements that President Sadat and Prime Minister Begin are signing tonight is entitled A Framework for Peace in the Middle East. And the other thing that we must do is to stand with our allies and friends and freedom-loving people around the world and say, we will not go to Moscow and participate in the Olympic Games in your capital.
During his time in office, Carter faced a number of serious challenges, including a major energy crisis, high inflation, and rising unemployment. In response, he introduced a national energy policy that included conservation measures, price controls, and the development of new technology. He also worked to combat inflation through measures such as wage and price controls. In foreign affairs, Carter pursued a policy of promoting human rights and worked to improve relations with countries around the world. He successfully brokered the Camp David Accords between Israel and Egypt, which led to a peace treaty between the two nations. He also pursued arms control agreements with the Soviet Union and worked to normalize relations with China. Carter's presidency was marked by several crises, including the Iran hostage crisis, in which 52 American diplomats and citizens were held hostage in Iran for 444 days. This crisis, along with other factors such as the ongoing energy crisis and high inflation, contributed to a decline in Carter's popularity. In the 1980 presidential election, Carter was defeated by Republican challenger Ronald Reagan. Despite this defeat, Carter's presidency is remembered for its achievements in areas such as energy policy, human rights, and diplomacy. After leaving office, Carter continued to work on issues related to peace and human rights through his work with the Carter Center. During Jimmy Carter's presidency, the United States faced a period of economic turmoil known as stagflation, which was characterized by high inflation and stagnant economic growth. This led to rising prices for many goods and services. For example, in 1979, the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, or OPEC, raised oil prices to an average of $20 a barrel. In response, President Carter instituted energy conservation measures and deregulated oil prices to increase U.S. supply. However, these measures took time to have an effect, and gas prices remained high during his presidency. In 1976, the average price of gas was 61 cents per gallon, but by 1980, it had risen to $1.19 per gallon. Another example of rising prices during Carter's presidency can be seen in the housing market. In the mid-1970s, median house prices dropped by more than $3,000, but they began to rise during Carter's term in office. Overall, rising prices were a significant challenge during Carter's presidency, and his administration took a number of measures to try to combat inflation and improve economic growth. So, now let's take a look at 10 events that happened during and after President Jimmy Carter's administration. 1. Carter's inauguration. On January 20th, 1977, Jimmy Carter was inaugurated as the 39th President of the United States. In his inaugural address, Carter spoke about the need for unity and cooperation, saying, quote, "We must adjust to changing times and still hold to unchanging principles," unquote.
You have given me a great responsibility to stay close to you, to be worthy of you, and to exemplify what you are. Let us create together a new national spirit of unity and trust. Your strength can compensate for my weakness, and your wisdom
can help to minimize my mistakes. Let us learn together and laugh together and work together and pray together, confident that in the end we will triumph together in the right. The American dream.
So many people were hopeful when Carter was inaugurated as president, as they saw him as a fresh start after the Watergate scandal that had led to the resignation of President Richard Nixon. 2. Pardoning of Vietnam War draft evaders. On January 21st, 1977, Carter pardoned all Vietnam War draft evaders as one of his first acts in office.
On this day in 1977, President Jimmy Carter pardoned American draft evaders. Many young men who opposed the Vietnam War either did not register for the draft or fled to Canada. In order to put the war behind us and begin a cultural reconciliation, Carter made good in his campaign promise and granted an unconditional pardon.
This decision was controversial, with some seeing it as a necessary step towards healing the divisions caused by the war, while others saw it as an insult to those who had served. 3. Creation of a national energy policy. During his presidency, Carter created a national energy policy that included conservation, price control, and new technology. He called for Americans to reduce their energy consumption, and he introduced measures such as tax credits for home insulation and the establishment of the Department of Energy. Carter's national energy policy received mixed reactions. Some people supported his efforts to reduce energy consumption and to promote conservation, while others saw his measures as intrusive and ineffective. Doesn't every U.S. president face similar circumstances? Let us know in the comments. 4. Camp David Accords. In September 1978, Carter mediated talks between Prime Minister Menachem Begin of Israel and President Anwar Sadat of Egypt at Camp David, resulting in a peace treaty between the two nations. The Camp David Accords were seen as a major diplomatic achievement and helped to improve relations between Israel and its Arab neighbors. And many people saw the Accords as a significant step towards peace.
There are still great difficulties that remain, and many hard issues to be settled. The questions that have brought warfare and bitterness to the Middle East for the last 30 years will not be settled overnight. But we should all recognize the substantial achievements that have been made. One of the agreements that President Sadat and Prime Minister Begin are signing tonight is entitled A Framework for Peace in the Middle East.
5. Panama Canal Treaties. During his presidency, Carter successfully pursued the Panama Canal Treaties, which transferred control of the Panama Canal from the United States to Panama. The treaties were controversial in the United States, with some seeing them as a loss of American influence in the region, while others saw them as a necessary step towards improving relations with Latin America. 6. Strategic Arms Limitation Talks. Carter also successfully pursued the second round of Strategic Arms Limitation Talks, or SALT II, with the Soviet Union. These talks aimed to reduce the number of nuclear weapons held by both countries and to improve relations between the two superpowers. And generally, these talks were seen as a positive step towards reducing tensions between the United States and the Soviet Union. However, some people criticized the talks for not going far enough in reducing the number of nuclear weapons held by both countries. 7. Confronting stagflation. During his presidency, Carter confronted stagflation, which is a combination of high inflation and stagnant economic growth.
And then in 1979, a second oil shock hit the United States after the Iranian Revolution. Wait, Stan, did we say 1979? We got to put up a picture of Jimmy Carter. Bam! Sorry, Gerald Ford, there's a peanut farmer in town. So during the 1970s, inflation soared to 10% a year, and economic growth slowed to 2.4%, resulting in what came to be known as stagflation. Unemployment rose, and a new economic statistic was born, the misery index, the combination of unemployment and inflation. At the beginning of the decade, it was 10.8. By 1980, it had doubled.
He introduced measures such as wage and price controls to try to combat inflation, but faced criticism for his handling of the economy. Many people felt his measures were not effective in combating inflation or in improving economic growth. 8. The 1980 presidential election. In the 1980 presidential election, Carter was defeated by Republican challenger Ronald Reagan. Reagan won in a landslide, with many voters citing concerns about the economy and foreign policy as reasons for their support for Reagan over Carter. 9. Post-presidency diplomacy and advocacy. After leaving office, Carter turned to diplomacy and advocacy, working to promote human rights and to resolve conflicts around the world. He founded the Carter Center in 1982 to advance peace and health worldwide. His post-presidency diplomacy and advocacy work has been widely praised, and many people see Carter as an effective advocate for human rights and conflict resolution. And 10. Nobel Peace Prize. In 2002, Carter was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for his efforts to find peaceful solutions to international conflicts and for advancing democracy and human rights. The Nobel Committee cited his work on the Camp David Accords and his efforts to promote peace in countries such as Haiti and North Korea. And his Nobel Peace Prize was widely celebrated, with many people seeing it as recognition of Carter's efforts to promote peace and human rights around the world.
Today in 2002, former President Jimmy Carter was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. He used his influence as former leader of the free world to advocate conflict resolution and to promote human rights and economic development. The chairman of the Nobel Awards Committee called Carter the best ex-president the country ever had.
Overall, people reacted in different ways to these 10 events, with some seeing them as positive steps forward, while others were more critical. But again, all leaders, U.S. presidents or not, face similar reactions. Remember poet John Lydgate's quote, which was later adopted by President Abraham Lincoln? Quote, "You can please some of the people all of the time. You can please all of the people some of the time. But you can't please all of the people all of the time." Unquote.
The 98-year-old, who is the longest-lived American president, has been described as a hands-on public servant. The couple have been advocates, fundraisers, and on-site construction volunteers.
What you're looking at right now is video from 2019 where Carter lended a helping hand despite some health challenges, and the Carters have worked alongside over 100,000 volunteers over the course of their involvement.
Jumping to more recent reports, former President Jimmy Carter has been receiving hospice care at home since February 2023. His wife, Rosalind Carter, is still alive at age 95 and lives with her husband in Plains, Georgia. But in May 2023, her family announced that she has dementia. Their grandson, Jason Carter, tweeted that they are at peace and their home is full of love. The Carter family asked for privacy during this time and is grateful for the concern shown by his many admirers. And that, my friends, brings us to the end of our deep dive into the life and legacy of Jimmy Carter, a man who walked the corridors of power with a farmer's humility and a humanitarian's resolve. He had his fair share of challenges, both domestic and international, and while his strategy sparked debate, his commitment to peace and human rights remained steadfast. Carter's story is a testament to the complexities of leadership, particularly the presidency, illuminating the intricate tapestry of American history. And in the words of John Lydgate, so aptly re-echoed by Lincoln, we learn that leadership is not a quest for universal approval, but a daring act of holding firm to one's principles in the face of adversity. Thank you for joining us on this journey. Stay tuned to Buffy's World as we continue illuminating the shadows of American history. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep learning. Bye for now.